Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, and welcome to, depending on however you may look at your clock or wherever you may live, this early morning or middle of the night bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this middle of the night or early morning bonus upload, shall we? Tonight's first encounter. I'm an avid hunter, and every year in my early 20s I would spend every weekend in the woods of the national park near Oklahoma, close to the Red River. I'd normally trek in about 2 to 3 miles. My first encounter was roughly 10 years ago. I had set up along a clearing that was a good 20 feet up into a tree. As dawn approached, I had a large 12-point buck slowly coming into the clearing, just about 300 to 400 yards off. I let it come closer and took aim. I took the shot right to the kill zone through the heart and lungs with my 30-06 195 grain ballistic tip round. After watching it fall through my scope, I slung my gun, and I was getting ready to climb down out of the tree stand. I watched this deer get up and run back into the woods on 2 legs. I had no idea what had just happened, but I had heard stories of shapeshifters and such in my youth from my grandmother, who was half Native American. So I got out of there right after that. A few years later, I'm in the same area hunting. I had set my stand and ladder the previous day, and around midnight hiked out to my stand so I'd be ready for dawn. I got into my stand at around 2 in the morning, and I was waiting patiently. After a couple of hours, around 6 a.m., 30 minutes till sunup, I heard something grab a hold of my ladder. Then it sounded like something was climbing my ladder, but it sounded like claws on metal. I pointed my rifle straight down and fired. I hit something on my first shot and heard a scream. So naturally, I emptied the rifle, still pointing straight down at my ladder. I did not dare look down for fear of what I would see and lock eyes with this creature. I pulled out my .357 Magnum revolver and proceeded to empty the cylinder toward the sound of the movement I had heard. Once that was spent, I reloaded it and continued the barrage. There was still something out there, and I could hear it. I had 1 gun left with ammo left and pulled out my 9mm that I kept with me for self-defense, just in case. I fired a few rounds toward the noise I had heard, then waited until morning. A few rounds left in my 9mm and clutching it for dear life. When morning came, I looked at my surroundings, climbed down out of the tree. Around my tree stand was a dark blackish blood that smelled horrible. I can only describe it as a smell worse than death. It had went off deeper into the woods. I hiked to the trail as fast as I could, and when I got there, I saw someone else in the distance. He was going in the same direction I was, and he as well looked terrified. I reloaded everything while he was closing the distance, and once he got closer, I asked him if he was heading out as well. He told me he heard a lot of gunshots earlier, and then a scream. I asked him where he was posted up, and he pointed in the direction that I had seen the blood trail go. He said he heard something run by him after the gunshots had stopped, and when dawn hit, he saw something animalistic running around on 2 legs. I got his name, we'll call him Jim, and he told me we should get out of these woods. He was native to the area and half Cherokee, and told me if what he saw was what he thought, we needed to leave. We got out of the woods. Surprisingly, we both parked in the same area. We shared a beer, and around noon we summoned up the courage to go back for our things. After a slow hike, we went to my stand first. My steel ladder that was secured by ratchet straps and bungee to the tree was ripped from the tree. It was bent and tore up. My tree stand is still in that tree to this day, I assume. He looked at the blood trail, then went white. The tracks were a mix of human and canine. We made it to his tree stand after a bit. He was only 800 feet from where I was, surprisingly. His gear was strewn across the forest floor like mine, a bent ladder, but unlike my tree stand, his had been ripped off the tree and thrown. We both left the area and went back to our vehicles. So after the last encounter, Jim and I traded phone numbers and hung out when I went up there to hunt. It kind of became our thing to go hunting together. He knew the woods up there better than I did, and he was good company. 2 years after the incident that caused us to meet, we're posted up in a blind in a clearing. We generally put our stands close or hunted back to back in a blind over the 2 years we had hunted together. If one of us had a shot when we were in the blind, we would signal to the other with a tap in the back from the elbow. That morning, both of us had a shot. We both fired. I hit the doe I was aiming at square in the chest. As it went down, it turned and ran on its back legs, dead sprinting into the woods. Jim's quarry did the same after he had hit it. We went to investigate, and once the animals turned, the hoof prints got larger and then changed to human tracks. There was no blood around the tracks, and the area smelt of rotten meat. Jim said we should leave, and I wasn't going to disagree with him. We both stopped hunting in those woods after that experience. Of note, I carried as much firepower as I did because of my encounters with the locals multiple times. Campsites torn up, food stolen, and being followed in the woods for a mile or two. I carried the revolver to put an animal out of its misery. I carried the 9mm in case I needed to deal with a person, and needed more than 5 reasons. I have no clue to this day what I encountered in those woods. I had heard of shapeshifters and such before, but from the tales they were more durable. I used a 30-06 with 195 grain ballistic tip round every time I hunt. But that's my experience. I hope you all maybe have some thoughts on what it was that I saw and what had happened. Tonight's second encounter. I have an experience that I would like to share. I know some are not going to believe it, but I know what has happened. I've been followed by Dogman for a couple of years now. It first started when I was smoking a cigarette outside at night, and I get this dreadful feeling like a spotlight is on me and something can see me, but I cannot see it. Lo and behold, I see a large figure standing illuminated at my neighbor's fence across from mine. It was standing in front of the porch light, so I could see its shadow cast from the light. For a few seconds it stood trying to intimidate me with its posture, and then it ducked down under view from the fence. This was the first encounter. As the months go by, I end up in jail. This is relevant because I had at least 10 dreams pertaining to encounters with these dogmen and fighting them and or killing them. And it was in my dreams that I first learned what they smelled like. Imagine rotting flesh mixed with armpit sweat and wet dog. It is awful. As I got closer to my release date, the feeling that something's going to follow me manifests. And I was right, because I've encountered at least 2 more dogmen. One was white and looked like the Howling, and the first time I saw it was behind a fence, with its face covered in blood, looking at me once again across my backyard behind the neighbor's fence. Different city, different house. All sorts of particular and paranormal stuff has happened, like motion lights going off a lot, and movement outside. And it was a horrendous night because my room did not have any curtains, and I kept seeing it running back and forth from the roof ledge, bits of arm here and ears there, and the best way I can describe the white one's ears, like the Easter rabbit's ears, mixed but canine. We're talking underworld crap. I would hear heavy thuds like it jumped off the roof onto the grass, and I was scared because I woke my roommate up, and I got him to lay on the bed and see from my perspective to see if he could spot this creature. He did, and that's when I saw the black one on my neighbor's roof from my other window. It had thick digigrade leg and a wide V torso and arms that hung past its knees, and it was in a semi-squatting position. It had a bear's head, very furry mane, with a wolf's face and a slender snout, and luminescent, mainly gray with a white tint color of eyes, and the pupils were round, not slitted. It stared at me, and ducked out of view, and I've had trouble sleeping that whole night and a couple days after. I didn't get aggressive vibes from it, but curiosity. To this day, weird stuff happens, like I'll hear my back door rattle and grunts and commotion outside, and I moved again to a different house, for a grand total of 3 moves so far, and there is also no crickets chirping outside, and especially since it was summer, which is a sign of predator. Like eerie pure silence. I'm still having dreams about getting attacked by dogmen, but somehow I brutally put up a fight, like ripping snouts off and full-on King Kong vs. dinosaur ripping jaws apart. I never die, but I usually wake up in the middle of the fight when I'm winning. I'm just saying this is what happened. No exaggeration. It's also worth mentioning that I have special gifts to boot. I'm an empath as well, as I can see invisible entities such as ghosts. I also have precognitive abilities and can detect something before it happens. I'm also an INFJ personality type, so I'm just throwing that out there if you guys can piece together a correlation. But there's other stuff I am capable of, but I don't want to mention it. Anyhow, as a conclusion, I am eagerly open to hear theories. Night's third experience. We live out near some old cotton fields. Growing up near St. Andrews College in North Carolina, exploring the old farms and woods was how I spent most of my time in middle school. We lived in an area from 5th through 10th grade. I was mid-popular. Okay, lower mid-popular. I had a few friends and could make anyone laugh, but we were not rich, so I was never going to be the cool kid. Best friend was my dog Levi, 120-poundish Rottweiler lab-looking dog that was very intelligent. He'd walk with me to the bus stop about a half a mile away, and when the bus took off, I'd see him trot back toward home. Come 3 p.m., he was sitting at the stop sign waiting for me. Even on days we got out early, he'd be there. I don't know what time he came back, but he was always there. He wouldn't let anyone near me if they had intentions other than a high five. We had a bond. Not too far into the woods, there was a collapsed shack with a rotted-out homemade wooden boat propped against it. It sat next to a small pond, maybe 2 acres. It was a puzzle-quality scene, like 1,000 pieces. I started fishing it regularly. With shallow water in North Carolina, the fish bite better at dusk and dawn. I had sports and stuff after school, so I started going in the morning. I'd get up a little before sunrise, grab 2 rods I liked, a tackle box, jump on my mountain bike, and hold them with my handlebars, Levi trotting by my side. You could ride up to a trench about 200 feet from the pond, and you'd have to foot it the way through. A trail on the other side went around the pond and had a few clearings in which you could get access to the water. There were some slate stones and millstones down by the water's edge that you could flip over and dig around for crickets or worms. There were always broken shells near the millstones. Flip the wrong one and you'd see one of those wolf spiders too big to step on. They might take your shoe. Who knows? Levi would sit on the bank with me, and I'd throw him a small catch or two, and we'd head home in time to shower up and catch the bus. We never saw another person or debris from other people fishing down there. One morning, things went a little different. About halfway there, we could hear tap, tap, tapping, as if someone was building something near the pond with nails and a hammer. I thought, oh great, someone's blocking off the trail and we won't be allowed back there anymore. Closer, tap, 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 tap. Now we could see a trench, still tapping, no person at the end of the trail. We get to the trench. Now we could see the shack, tapping pretty loud now. But no one was near the shack either. Tap, tap, tap came from the pond. Who would be fishing in our hole? No one else ever comes here. Why would they be fishing with a hammer? Ditched the bike and climbed through the trench. We got to the entrance of the trail, and now you could tell the tapping was loud and right by the water's edge. Levi stopped and sat. My dog, who was not scared of anything, stopped and sat. I patted my leg and his ears went down. I set the rods down and started to ease my way down the trail without making a noise. Tap, 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 crunch, thud. There was a little fog coming off of the water, but I could see it now. In the first clearing, something huge was hunched over by a millstone. It was facing away from me. I thought it was a person, but there were no clothes, no hat, no gear, just reddish-brown fur. I watched from the trail through the brush for what felt like 20 minutes, but in reality was probably 2. It raised its hand up straight out and cracked a baseball-sized rock onto the millstone a few times. Clack, 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 crunch, thud. It was the scariest and most interesting thing I had ever seen. I was in awe. As a Harry and Henderson's fan, I found one. I was watching one. I tried to take in every detail so I could tell my dad everything. Something crunches the leaves on the trail behind me. I gasped to see Levi. Thank God it was not another one of them had blown my cover. The thing snorts loud enough for me to look back. Its shoulders and all, we are turned towards us. I could see its nose, but no mouth or eyes. Levi barks and runs, jerks me left. The Bigfoot gets up and dashes for the trail further ahead, up a very steep bank. It cleared an area I would consider impassable in a few strides. It was massive. It looked like it should be shaking the ground with each stride, but you couldn't hear it. I bolted back to the trench, scooped the tackle box, left the rod, climbed out, got to my bike to see a trail of dust. Levi hauling ass to our house. He was sitting in the yard when I got back, and looked like he was in more fear than I was. I had never seen him like this. I don't think he bailed on me as much as he was going to get help. I didn't go fishing there again. I took a friend and my dad down to show them the broken shells. In broad daylight, of course. They were little freshwater clams. They were broken, not opened. A baseball-sized rock was still there. It was more the size of a grapefruit. It was all scarred up. This creature was using it as a tool. It was smashing open these clams and eating them. Tap, 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 snack, report, no footprints. It was primarily straw and the leaves in the area. Some hair on the tree. My dad said it was deer fur. They didn't believe me. Not many people do. I believe I ruined her breakfast. I feel like it was a her. For some reason. I like to think the rod was an offering and they learned how to use it to fish. I used to sketch a Sasquatch snoozing in a lawn chair with a fishing pole in hand and a bobber out on the water. I should recreate it. I'm certain it would make a great t-shirt. Its final encounter. Back in 2017, I lived with my aunt in Minnesota, and while living with her, I worked at a nearby Walgreens, which was about a 35-minute bike ride from her house. This happened in October. One night I had worked the closing shift, but we didn't close and leave till about 30 minutes longer than what we were used to, due to lots of work needing to be done. I biked to and from work, so as someone who believes in the paranormal stuff 100%, biking home at night was always an easy thing to do because my mind would often go wild. Now, the route I take to go home is somewhat isolated. I have to go past a park and a lot of wooded areas. It's barely lit up, as there aren't many streetlights or houses for the most part on this route. I had just gotten to the park, where it's mostly natural and woodsy. I was talking to my ex on the phone as a way to ease my nerves on the way home. I had briefly looked down at my phone when I heard this weird screeching sound, which caused me to look back up. There, to my horror, was this large, tall, deathly frail looking humanoid creature that looked very white and pale, almost as if it was sickly. Before I could really get a good look at it, it dropped down onto all fours and leapt into the wooded area. Seeing this, I panicked and began to pedal as fast as I could. Meanwhile, I could hear the thing taking chase, but remained hidden in the woods. I could hear branches constantly snapping, leaves crunching. This thing was in pursuit. I got about halfway through the route to a point where nature stops being trees and woods and opens up to rolling hills. Just flat grass, but a bunch of hills. As soon as I got to this point, I heard this thing stop chasing me in complete silence. That's when I noticed a very peculiar scent. Blueberry pie, which really weirded me out because there was no houses, restaurants, or buildings of any kind around here. I paid no attention to it, as to me it was coming from the distant hills, as if it was a thing somehow created the scent to draw me away from the sidewalk and towards it. So I kept pedaling and eventually made it to where the town homes were, and eventually back home to safety, which, yes, I did throw my bike into the garage and run inside, up to my bedroom like a frightened child, and turn the lights on and TV. Now, it doesn't end here. A few days later, when I started forgetting about this thing I'd seen, I spent the day handing out candy for my aunt and watching TV/YouTube until it was time to retire to bed. Shortly after I had gotten to my room, again I heard this weird screeching sound, and for some reason my idiot self decided to look out the window. There, about 50 feet away from the house, standing underneath a few trees, was the creature thing, which made me quickly just close the window and shut the blinds. Next day, surprisingly, my aunt had asked me if I had heard the weird sound last night, and saw the thing as well. I guess from what she had told me, she had heard the noise and wanted to see what it was, so she took the dog and went to the backyard and had seen the thing standing there. Almost immediately, it dropped onto all fours and leapt away. Now, when it comes to the size, I'd say I saw it standing on two legs. It was about 7 to 8 feet tall. I am 6'7", so it was quite taller than I was. It looked way pale, like it was nothing but skin and bones, yet moving incredibly fast. From the speed it leapt away and pursued me while I was biking home. Sorry, I was piecing that together. Right at the end, they say, I apologize for the lack of good writing because English is not my first nor second language. Well, there you have it, folks. Some terrifying encounters to either start your day or end your day with this early morning or middle of the night bonus upload. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Thank you for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that keeps the channel growing and going, and honestly, what gives people a place and a chance to share their experiences and theories judgment-free. Thank you. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real, they're out there, and dangerous. Share this information with the people you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for answers, and God bless.